Hello, welcome to the Mystical Institute of Healing Arts. My name is Alicia McNaughton, and today's class we're going to be discussing shadow work, healing the shadow within. I'm just going to invite you to light a candle, get comfortable. We're going to burn in some Palo Santo, clearing and opening up sacred space, calling in the light as we work with our unconscious. If you have any crystals that are dark in color, this one is black moonstone, which is also really good to use during the shadow season of the new moon. Black tourmaline, which is great for clearing negative energy. Smoky quartz. This one's actually a Lemurian. You can see the striations there. But smoky is really good for using as a wand, as a healing tool for clearing negative energy. Psychic sludge from the chakras. I use it for calling in Chokure, 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 bringing clear energy here. And the Halu, 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 which is shadow work energy, Reiki energy from the lineage Karuna. We're going to call in before us Archangel Raphael and the green flame for cleansing our physical bodies and any blockages in our aura. And behind us, we're going to call in Archangel Gabriel, clearing our throat space, bringing through assistance in our voices and communication, in explaining shadow work, in understanding shadow work, and really listening to our higher consciousness in this class today and in our lives. And to our right, we're going to call in this beautiful blue flame energy of Archangel Michael, bringing through alignment with our divine life purpose, clearing out anything that is not in alignment with divine higher will. To the left of us, we're going to be calling in Archangel Uriel and this benevolent energy of the gold flame, healing our mental bodies, healing our psyches, healing our personality issues, bringing them in alignment with the divine life blueprint of the gold. And this is black sheen or gold sheen obsidian. And to me, this is such a perfect visualization for shadow work. There is always light in the shadow. So when we go in there, what we're actually doing is we're bringing our unconscious conscious. So when things are in the unconscious or the subconscious, they have a tendency to act out and to play out in our lives in an unconscious way, so they can, be hidden or covert or unhealthy in some way, and we're not really seeing them, so we can't really shift it. When we bring it into the light, we can transform, transmute, clear, self-actualize, grow, which is the beauty of shadow work. Obsidian works with the shadow self. It helps us to really clear that stuff out. So if you're wanting to do this work, then go for it. Grab an obsidian. If people aren't ready for it and they don't know that they need to do shadow work and they happen to reach for obsidian, they're gonna have their shadow work meet them, and it might be really shocking because it's been in their unconscious. So sometimes you'll hear people say that they aren't ever going to go near obsidian for those reasons, but consciously working through the shadow is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing that you can do for your spiritual development and becoming a conscious person. When people initially get into light work, metaphysics, spirituality, often they're just looking for a way to get rid of anything that doesn't feel very good to them. They're looking for relief. They're looking to just feel good. They're looking for a solution, and there's nothing wrong with looking for a solution and wanting to feel good, but there is work involved in being able to maintain it, sustain it, achieve it. And absolutely there is work in becoming a professional in this field. Okay, so many people get this idea that they don't want to do the work that they're doing anymore, and they've always wanted to use their spiritual abilities, and so they will be in a big hurry to be able to say they are a spiritual teacher before they have actually done their shadow process. And this will get shoved under the rug, and it will come out in their work, in their classes. There is no hiding from it. It's going to come up, especially if you're really wanting to step up into your power. Stepping up into your power means you have to go into the places where you lost it, where you left it. And often those are the painful memories that we have suppressed, compartmentalized, pushed aside into what we call our shadow self, which is a part of your soul. Everybody has it. It comes in with your soul. It's great, actually. It's really helpful for, mothers who have to raise their children, fathers who have to work extremely long hours and put on a happy face and suit up and show up and do the job and leave their problems at home. And how often do you hear this in society? It's drilled into us all the time that there is a way of being, and then there's a way that's unacceptable. So anything that is deemed unacceptable is usually the stuff that wouldn't really look good, out there on your social media feed, or out there on like the cover of a magazine where everybody looks idealistic, or they're showing their best selves. That other stuff has to go somewhere. So the shadow work is holding it for you. Now, you're not just pushing off the parts of you that you deem unacceptable, you're actually pushing off a lot of your energy. And in that energy, once you do the work around transmuting it, once you really are able to alchemize that, what happens is you take that shadow energy and you bring it into this beautiful self-actualized version of that energy, which is often where your power is, your spiritual abilities, your gifts, your divine life purpose, all of the things that you want are hidden in those energies, those pockets of energy. Now, society has taught us to, if you're not feeling comfortable, mainstream society has taught us over the years to go to an MD. And again, I'm not a doctor, so if you are taking medication, I have to give you my disclaimer that I'm not a doctor, but the popular thing to do is to go and have a drink or to go and take some antidepressants or take something to suppress it. So many people, end up leaving relationships with people that they love because they don't know how to deal with conflict or resolve things or continuously grow together. So you'll end up with people who only know how to have a relationship for a short period of time, and then they'll go into another relationship and have it for a short period of time, and they become addicted to just that part of being able to connect with people because they haven't learned depth in their relationship. So they're not going to feel complete in that area of their lives. Now you can come and get readings, asking when is that going to happen for me, putting it off on somebody else. But when it's going to happen for you is when you dive into that piece of compartmentalized energy and alchemize it and start to do your shadow work. In there is a person's ability to have very strong love in their life that's able to grow together and be very fulfilling and passionate, all of those things, right? So that can be said for all of the things that we want. The shadow naturally is something that is happening in nature cycles. During winter is shadow season, when the leaves on the trees have fallen away, when everything is barren, when everybody goes inside, when it's time to bundle up and go inward. This is when we do that type of work. In yoga, they call it yin energy, as in the yin to the yang. In the birth cycle, it's the womb space, right? In astrology, it's whenever there's a retrograde phase of a planet, it goes into the shadow aspect of that planet. The most popular one would be Mercury retrograde. Lots of people are leery of that one. It happens more often because Mercury moves very quickly, and so it turns retrograde 4 times a year. So we're really conscious of that one. But it seems like everything goes to a screeching halt. And if you don't understand shadow work, you'll fight against it. And then it becomes unmanageable for a lot of people because they're trying to do the opposite of what the energy is telling them to do, which is if you were in tune and conscious of that time, you would know, okay, it's time for me to go back into those compartmentalized areas and to finish that healing process. So it can be a time to clean out old closets, to be a time to have old conversations, or to bump into people that you used to know. There's a lot of other things that come up with going back and remembering. So there's more I can say about this, but what I want you to understand is this is often when people get confused with their spiritual work, is when the shadow pops up. Okay, this is usually when people will come in for a healing or come in for a reading or get a house clearing because they just want to get rid of this stuff. And they'll tell me, I just want to get this done. I just want to get this taken care of. As if it doesn't have anything to do with them, and it always has something to do with them. Our houses, the energy in our houses is a reflection of what's going on with the people who live in the house. Even if you were just drawn to a house, there's a reason. There's something there that's a match to your vibration. Maybe not your conscious vibration, but the unconscious. And the unconscious can go all the way back through your soul history, either in this lifetime or in previous lifetimes. And a lot of us are very old souls. And so what we're seeing in the energy around us are reflections that are mirroring to us, showing us the patterns of compartmentalized stored energy that we came into this incarnation with, that we carried from childhood into adulthood, that we carried from the last relationship, the last career, whichever you're working on at the time, into this one. And they become our blocks. And these blocks is what is coming up for us when we're saying, I want this thing on the other side of this block. I want to be in love. I want money and success. I want security. I want spiritual enlightenment. I want health, right? So the blocks are, okay, well, this has been festering here for a long time, maybe even eons of time. And it's showing up for you now in a way that is unavoidable. Like, you just have to see it now. You may not understand the message that it's trying to send you. It could just be this reoccurring pain that you have in your body. It could become more than just a nagging ache or pain or creak or crack. It could be something that you need to actually go and deal with Western medicine at this point. But it works really well if you have something physical to work with it on an energetic level, in addition to working with it with your family doctor. Okay. I would love to see the two worlds come together. I think that there are benefits to that for sure. And that is how I do my healing work. After years of studying holistic medicine, I've really learned how to deal with things in the physical and also deal with them in the spiritual, emotional, mental categories in your aura as well, not just the what's showing up, what's rearing up for you, what's the most glaring, right? With my clairvoyant vision and years of doing shadow work, it's very easy for me to see what's in a person's unconscious. Now, we also want to work with what you're ready for at this time. There might be things that are deeper in your subconscious, and we're not going to go so deep that you can't deal with it. We're going to go to the one that's ready to be released and alchemized and shift. Your higher self is in charge of when you heal these shadow aspects and is always bringing it to you, and that is how you are creating. So a lot of people will talk about manifestation and thinking positively and really being able to say with intention what we're calling in, and a lot of that has a lot of benefit. However, there is this whole other part that a lot of people tend to leave out with the law of attraction, where they're only dealing with this conscious energy of what they're manifesting. There's this whole other side of the spectrum, the shadow aspect of the spectrum, which is what this is showing, right? So in here, this stuff is actually also attracting, like a magnet, these things to you, because we are really here in the earth school in order to evolve. So you might be really manifesting this very light, conscious part of you, and really what needs to happen is this needs to merge, because you have this much of your energy that's manifesting something else. This much of your energy that's manifesting this, and sometimes people are wondering, why can't I manifest what I am manifesting? It just doesn't seem to be happening. Well, you need to go in here and figure out what you left in your shadow, bring it up into the light so that you can make that conscious, and then your manifestations will happen. So when people first start in metaphysics, they want to get their Reiki attunement. They want to learn how to do readings. They want to learn how to do sound events. They want to learn how to hold, beautiful ceremonies for people. They want to be able to do this. And then what starts happening is they either don't have enough energy to hold space, or they don't understand what's happening with the energy in the room, and it gets out of control for them, because they haven't learned how to alchemize energy, how to actually shift consciousness and to be very aware of what's happening with each one of these people. Anytime you bring light into a person's aura, or awareness into a part of their life, in a reading, in an energy session, in a ceremony, they're going to be bringing their shadows up to the surface. Now, if you have shadow work to do that's in your unconscious, what'll happen is their unconscious will stick to your unconscious like a magnet. Why? Because your higher self is wanting you to take a look at what's in here. So they brought this person to you so that you can actually take a look at what is the same about you two. That way that person can heal and you can heal. And this is shadow work. It happens when you become a professional. It happens in lots of different arenas. I've worked with people with all different types of careers and lifestyles, and this just seems to be a human pattern. So if you're working in the spiritual community as a professional, it just turns the volume up on all of that full blast, because you've told the universe, I want to step into my power, and they say, okay, well, you left all of this behind. So if you're wanting to be this bright, we're going to just bring all of this up. And then that person's like, whoa, I'm a little worried about diving into spirituality now, because the last time that I did that, all of this stuff came up, right? Well, you can chew it off into bite-sized pieces. They call it the dark night of the soul. Everybody goes through it. Oftentimes it'll happen when there's a loss, like a death, divorce, or disaster, what we call the 3Ds. And it creates an opportunity for you to open and for you to actually go into this area of stored energy and start to bring it into the light and embrace all of it. When there's a tragedy, you have to go through a grieving process. So it almost forces you, it like knocks you into this huge growth spurt. So oftentimes it'll feel like the worst thing that ever happened to a person or to yourself, but looking back on it, you'll say, but it was also the best thing that ever happened to me, because of look at where I am now. And I can definitely relate to that. Definitely relate to that. So I've learned that there are no coincidences. I've learned to ride the serendipity in my life, and to understand that when the student's ready, the teacher will appear, and that there are no accidents. There's meaning in so many things in my life, in everybody's life. If you learn how to turn on that channel and to start to notice all the messages that are being sent to us by our higher self, by our spirit guides, by the divine, by our soul contracts, it's just, we're in this hologram of the Earth School. So one of the good things that you can do when you are working with shadow is to know, depending on how clairvoyant you are, some of us can actually see our shadow show up and it looks like a being. For me, oftentimes it'll come in like a gray mist. Like I can almost feel like a thickness when it's coming in. And it's energy that needs to alchemize. So energy doesn't die, it just changes form. So in other lifetimes, or in even this lifetime, if there was a huge release of energy, either conscious or unconscious, it'll just sort of hang out there until you need that energy again, and then it'll come back and it will still be holding that same vibration when it comes back. But when it comes back, you'll be in a different vibration. You'll go, oh gosh, it's kind of like when you listen to a song and it brings up all these memories of how things used to be, and sometimes that's wonderful and sometimes it's painful. And there are times in my life where I listen to the same song over and over and over again, and now I just can't even listen to it, unless I'm going to actually want to do shadow work, because I know every time I hear that song, it's going to bring that energy into the space. I'm going to have to actually deal with those memories, right? So the idea is not to try to take sage and get rid of it, because that would be more denial. Okay, the idea is to embrace what's coming in and to hold space for yourself, and know that when you acknowledge it and accept it, it instantly starts to move, just from you noticing it, looking at it, embracing it, and sending love to yourself. It will feel intense in the moment that you're acknowledging, validating, embracing, yes, that really happened. Yes, that's really how I have been in the past. Wow. And you'll have this understanding of why too. And when you understand why, then when you see other people doing it, it doesn't have the same charge. So if there's something in my unconscious and I see someone else doing it, it's going to get under my skin, because it's pushing on this area of myself that I'm in denial about. And this person's reflecting it to me. Okay. Sometimes we're tempted to project our stuff onto that person and really get mad at them for having that quality or acting in that way, when a lot of the anger is, anger at ourselves for having been that way. and it's something that we haven't fully embraced yet, or understood, or alchemized, or shifted yet in our consciousness. And so when this person mirrors it to us, we automatically get very emotionally charged about that situation and want to blame that person, because when they come around, we feel a certain way. So we might think, oh, we really don't like them, but they may be mirroring something to us that if we were to admit and take a look at, we could change it. If there's something about you that, or myself, that I want to shift, I can shift it, and seeing it in that person makes it possible for me to own it and go, wow, now I know what that looks like, or what that feels like. And I can fully embrace it and think, all right, I don't like the way this feels, and I want to be more conscious of this behavior. And that's shadow work. That's shadow work, is I see that, wow, okay, this feels very distorted, this feels very out of alignment, or just a little, you know, whatever the range is for you. But oh, let's get it. What does it look like in alignment? So once you get it in alignment, and you do this with energy work, either in a session by yourself, in meditation, with another healer, that energy is going to start to move from distortion into alignment. And when it's in alignment, this is what it's all about. This is what we're wanting to call in for ourselves. But the only way to do that is not to take a stick of sage and get rid of the energy. It's to say, okay, the energy that I want is over here. This is what I want. This is where it is. How can I get it to balance? And that's the process. Okay, and there's lots of different shadow words that we will use. Reflections being one of the first, okay? So, it's really good to do these shadow exercises when it comes to reflections, okay? And you can write, you know, a list of 5 different people, or 5 different reflections that you can think of that really bug you. You can write the person's name and what is the behavior that is just extremely gets under your skin or affects you in a pretty major way. And just go ahead and write those things down. And once you've written them down, so you can go ahead and pause this and write them down, and then play it when you're ready to go to the next part of the shadow work. But I want you to circle the ones that are really bad for you, like the ones that just, oh my gosh, send you through the moon, like your pet peeves. Those are the ones I want you to circle, okay? So go ahead and do that. All right, so now that you have written your list of 5 people, or 5 situations, or 5 qualities that you see reflected in the world around you, that you see reflected in your family, your mother, your father, your siblings, your children, your friends, your colleagues, your boss, then what you want to do is you want to look at the ones that you've circled, and those are the ones that are really have a strong message for you. Your shadow is very much in the ones that you have circled. Now, oftentimes, sometimes, like, okay, there are things in our shadow that we don't express. So, like, let's say you have a lot of anger, but you never act out on it, and you hold it all inside. Seeing it acted out in the world around you is going to really trigger that stored energy of anger, maybe even rage that's buried inside. So it's still a reflection of our own shadow, even if it's not something that we act out on. And that's very confusing when you hear people talk about shadow work and saying that it's a reflection of you somehow if something around you is going on, because you'll look at your life and think, there's no way that that's a reflection of me, because I don't do those things. However, you may have done it in another lifetime. You know, it might be something that hasn't alchemized on a soul level, and there are lessons around it for you still, which is why it's getting such a strong reaction from you, and why it's continuously in your life in one way or another. There's something around it that you haven't learned yet. So working with healing energy, working with meditation, working with spirit guides, higher self, will help you to access the information as to why this is being attracted to you again and where it's hiding in your shadow. So, I do readings for people to help them to find this stuff if this is something that you need, but often people that are really in denial about their shadow will come in very closed off and will kind of insist that I show it to them so that they can deny it. You know, and if that's where you're at, you're not ready. You're not ready. It'll really happen more when you're in that dark night of the soul and you're open and you really are starting to see a bigger picture and you're allowing yourself to be more understanding, and that energy is more available when you're in a receptive state for you. And we're not doing this from a place of judgment, which is also what makes this hard. I've seen it happen in organized religion. I've seen it happen in metaphysics. I've seen it happen pretty much anywhere where there's people, you know, even psychology, different groups of people where they're really wanting to be the elite. They're wanting to prove that they've done all their work and that they can be at the top now, which is an actual ego defense, okay? If that's something that you're seeing or wanting to do, your ego is trying to keep you safe from those judgments, or from not being able to be in the cool kids club or in the in crowd, or to be on the top rung where it's supposedly safe, you know? To prove yourself and to feel worth. People will try to skip over all of this and have all these ego defenses to not seeing it so that they can be over here. Now, your ego doesn't always tell you the truth. It lies. It's there to protect you, but it lies. And we need our ego to keep ourselves, you know, organized, to drive the car, brush our teeth, you know, to work on our computers and do some of the following through and the footwork that comes down from our higher consciousness out here in the world. We need that. But if we put our ego in charge of our spiritual work, it tends to look awful. Like it tends to just not really function, and you're not able to really get to your shadow. The ego can show up and defend you being able to get to the shadow where your real power is, which is unfortunate. And everybody else can see that when that's happening. And another thing that people will do with their ego is they'll try to use shadow work as a weapon on other people. They'll point out all the different things that you need to own in your shadow, or this is just, you're pissed off, or you're angry, or you're feeling all these things towards me when you're trying to confront somebody, for example, or call them out on something, or draw a boundary with them, or do something very healthy like that. What'll happen with a person's spiritual ego is they'll come in and say, this is something that's reflected in your own shadow, and they'll try to rub your face in it and make it seem like they don't have to accept responsibility or own up to what they're doing because it's in your shadow. Now, it may well be in your shadow, but it's also in theirs. So both people are needing to do shadow work, and it's not a place for us to do that to other people. We're meant to do our own shadow work. Now, there are very well-meaning friends that can tell us things that we don't want to hear. Often it can happen with our spirit guides, but our spirit guides are going to do it in a way that's non-judgmental, and in a way that is unconditionally loving, and in a way where you'll hear this, the truth shall set you free. When you hear the truth that's coming in from your shadow, it will be a huge relief, even if it's something that's hard to hear, because you'll finally get the freedom from having that pattern and that stored energy in that place blocking your life, and you'll expand and awaken and become this evolved shadow piece. That piece of your puzzle will finally connect with the light and show you what your soul looks like at a higher consciousness level. And then that piece gets to do what it's meant to do, and your light shadow comes in. And that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be able to get to that. And there is no other way to do it besides going through the dark shadow first. So the ego will try to project light to skip over that part, because that part can be hard, and it's trying to protect you from anything that doesn't feel good. Okay, so a lot of people will get into spirituality and they will only focus on this, what they believe to be positive, when I don't know if you've ever met somebody who's excessively positive all of the time, and it doesn't feel natural, and it doesn't feel in integrity, authentic even. And it can be what we call a light shadow person. There are people who kind of lean towards the light shadow aspects of themselves, and people who lean towards the dark shadow aspects of themselves. And everybody has both, but sometimes one is more dominant. Okay, so the healthy light shadow is going to bring in, you know, whatever you left in your dark shadow that you thought was unacceptable is going to be hiding out there. Now, for some people, it's their spiritual ability. Like if you grew up in a home that was not going to allow clairvoyance, or not going to allow spiritual abilities, because that's just not in alignment with their culture or their belief system, that person is going to put those abilities into their dark shadow, because to their environment it was deemed unacceptable. But when they grew up and they moved out of those environments and they wanted to start to develop and open up spiritually and be who they were, then they can go into their dark shadow and get that stuff, right? So once you heal the belief systems and the trauma from growing up in something that wasn't really what you truly believed, that's painful. And you start to come back into alignment when you start to allow those feelings to come up, and then all of a sudden, boom, you can realign without any of these hang-ups, because you've done your work. And then your gifts come in. That's what the light shadow does. A light shadow person who's doing it from a place of trying to protect themselves from pain, and is trying to just project an image of themselves being a certain way, are the kind of people that are going to, you know, I'm fine, everything's fine, nothing's wrong, I feel great, I feel wonderful, no problems here. And you know that's not true. You can totally feel it from them that it's not true. It's almost stressful to be around them, because they're constantly trying to uphold that energy for everybody else, that there's a lot of anxiety in it. So there are also the people that will act really shocked and judgmental around things that are just human error, human mistakes, and they will come off as very self-righteous and give backhanded compliments and never admit to being wrong, right? And in extreme, that is a light shadow person. The other flip side of it is a light shadow person can really genuinely look optimistic, be optimistic, always looking to, you know, the more positive sides of the situation. And that's a good quality that really helps pull us out of a funk, pull us out of a depression, helps us to keep going. They're the cheerleaders of the world. Genuinely, you know that like when you're with them, their intentions are good, they're clean, they're gonna really want to be doing the best that they possibly can. It's just limited. They'll be able to find out so much more if they are willing to look a little bit deeper. So that's a light shadow person. There are dark shadow people. The dark shadow people are usually the empaths that are very introverted, that don't talk a lot, that are kind of, they don't really have really good social skills. They don't like parties, they don't like crowds. But people will meet them and just share everything that has ever happened, wondering why they've, like they'll say things to you like, I don't know why I'm telling you all of this. I've never told anybody this before. And that can happen with light shadow people too, but who are empathic and special. But the dark shadow people, you can tell when you're around them that they have a certain comfort level with the depth of certain situations that people wouldn't normally tell a light shadow person, because the dark shadow person is not going to be judgmental, really. They're gonna understand, and people can genuinely feel that. So oftentimes dark shadow people will be able to do really powerful healing work that goes really deep. The light shadow people will be really beautiful meditation teachers, yoga teachers, and they'll be able to hold space too in a really beautiful way. Not that you can't do both, because we all have both. It's just, you'll notice, you'll see when you're looking at different healers out there, they each have their own flavor, their own vibration, okay? Now, in extreme, the dark shadow person, they're so aware of the dark side of human behavior and the dark side of life that oftentimes they can just sink into it and not open the blinds or not go outside, or be prone to depression, or have a hard time accepting compliments, or you know, have a harder time when they do decide to go out and have fun. Sometimes they'll have to act out in a certain way, like they'll wear their shame on them so strongly that oftentimes they will get themselves into trouble. To go out and to be friends, they'll go and seek lower companions, and they'll go out into those dark corners of the world that they're very curious about. You'll find them getting into situations that can get them into trouble. And then they're going to need one of their light shadow friends to help pull them out of that situation. So there are extremes to both that are considered negative. Now, the dark isn't necessarily the same thing as negative, okay? Different things. Because in the dark is our womb space. In the dark is the soil. In the darkness is where we plant our seeds of intention. It's where we actually feel safe and protected. A lot of empaths will want to wear black. When they're in those places of deep alchemy and transformation, it's actually considered a color of protection. It gets you to be like you're in your cave and you're safe in there. Negative is totally different. Now, when you're in your darkness and you're acting out negatively, then that's negative. But sometimes you can be in your darkness and have it be a really beautiful, transformative awakening process where your seeds are sprouting and developing and growing and moving towards the light, and you're in this alchemy of change, and that's a beautiful thing. Okay, so that's what I'll say. All right, so let's talk about patterns of the shadow. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, actually, hold on. Okay, so light shadow. A really good thing to do is to write a list of 5 qualities that you admire. So if you have, you know, famous people or influential people, maybe it's a teacher that you really look up to or admire, role models, maybe it's somebody in your family that you've always looked up to or admired, or a friend, or somebody that, an author, whose books you really love. Think about what are the qualities that really impress you, that have awe-inspiring moments inside of you when you're listening to them, when you're deepening your awakening or really sitting with that information. What is it about them that's so moving and so powerful that it stays with you, that it's life-changing? Okay, and just sit, pause the video if you want, and write down 5 people or 5 qualities. It can even be the same person again and again. And the ones that, you know, leave you awestruck, where you're just like, I love this person, and you're blown away by them and their talent, you know, I want you to circle those as well. And, you know, come back when you're done and we'll talk about it. Okay, so now that you've done that, hopefully you paused it and you went and you did that, and we're just going to keep going with the video. The ones that you circled are also a part of your light shadow. Okay, and so if you're a dark shadow person, if you consider yourself to be more leaning towards that, this is going to be harder for you, much harder for you. If you're a light shadow person, it's going to be a lot harder for you to acknowledge your dark shadow. Okay, so, but the light shadow is also something that is hidden in your shadow self. So when you find a distortion again and you bring it into the light, what'll happen is this download of light will come into you. I'll actually see spirit pour it in. There's lots of different ways that they'll show up as a light shadow, and I'll see it move into either the person that I'm working on or myself when I'm doing healing work on myself, and I'll see it come in, and I'll actually see what it's bringing in, you know. And sometimes it's a spiritual gift, and sometimes they're practical ones, or sometimes they're physical strength. So there might be women who want to get pregnant and they you know aren't able to do that. What can happen is a remedy or an ability to procreate, or a remedy to cure an illness, or a remedy to have, you know, an organ that functions better, or whatever it is that is going on with you that you're wanting to achieve that's been blocked up until this time. The healed version of it will come in with your light shadow. And you may see a person who has that very strong healed version of whatever it is that you're lacking, and you might just be really in awe of them and drawn to them, like, how do they do that? It's just so amazing. And it's really a reflection of something that you have inside of you that you've just denied in some way, or it's been hiding out and blocked by a particular trauma or shadow aspect of yourself. So that is the gift that always comes in from shadow work, is you get to really heal yourself. You get to really achieve. You get to really sparkle and shine, which is what draws people to spirituality, is they see those people that have what they want, and they dive into spirituality thinking that they're going to do just a couple of things and it's going to happen for them. It's for some people, it can take years. For some people, there are things that will happen right away, and there are other things that will take longer. It's different for all of us. It depends on what your own particular soul journey is about in this incarnation. So, all right, great. So that's light shadow work. The patterns of the shadow that you want to look to, if you're having a hard time, you know, is look to the betrayals, the abandonments, the humiliations, the rejections. Look to the feedback that you get from others, both negative and positive, that you deny. Look to your compulsions and obsessive behaviors. Look to the lies, the deceit. Look to the secrets, not to tell them, but to understand. Look to the patterns of exaggerated emotions. Look to the kind of movies that you secretly like to go to. And write 5 examples that come to you. So a great way for somebody not to act out on their shadow aspects is to watch it in movies. Like, you might have a really like librarian type person who is very subdued and reads a lot of books and is very shy and meek and quiet in real life, and then you'll find that the kind of books that they're reading or the kinds of movies that they're watching are quite adventurous and out there, but they just haven't owned that aspect of their shadow, and they're living vicariously through other people, right? But it really is a part of who they are. They just haven't blossomed into it yet, or acknowledged it and alchemized it yet. So it's still there, and they're still drawn to it. Like, you might find somebody who like you'll hear these things like the empath and the narcissist, right? These relationships seem to happen a lot. And the empath will be the one who's like trying to heal, and the narcissist is usually the one that's locked down on it and doesn't want to look at it, but they have a common bond. Like, both of them will have a similar wounding. It's just what they're doing with it is a little bit different, per se. So the empath might be really drawn to the narcissist who's acting out on their darkness, and the empath might be holding it all inside and trying to alchemize and heal it, but there's still that connection, that bond. And sometimes there's past lifetime work that needs to be done with those two people, and that's why this is happening. And their relationship seems unhealthy, but they can't seem to separate because they are really trying to work something out. Okay, and we can actually heal those types of relationships through shadow work and contract work, which is something that I'll share about in another class. Soul contracts. Okay. All right, so that I want to talk about triggers a little bit more. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit, but like, let's say that you see something in somebody else. You'll hear terms like "you spot it, you got it," which was really hard for me to deal with when I first heard that as an empath and a clairvoyant, because I see a lot, I feel a lot. It was really hard for me to think that all of the things that I was seeing out there in the world that were really hard for me to deal with were something inside of me. It was just really, it didn't feel very empowering to hear those kinds of messages from some of the spiritual work that I was doing, and it took me a long time to understand a different way of looking at it. So if I see something out there in the world and I know that that seems imbalanced, but it doesn't have like a massive charge for me, then it's not something, it doesn't mean that that isn't happening, and I'm not, like, I can see it and it is happening, but it doesn't get under my skin. Therefore, it isn't something that I haven't dealt with in myself or my soul journey. And there's something about that that has a lesson for me. I'm either seeing a pattern on the other side of karma, like karma will come in one lifetime, and we'll talk more about this in past lifetime classes, but in one lifetime the person will be a villain and this person will be the victim. And then karma is like in another lifetime we trade places, and this person will be the victim and this person will be the villain. So the victim, who was once the villain, will see this villainous behavior and get massively triggered by it. Now, it doesn't mean that this is okay for them to be experiencing this. They still need to learn how to have healthy behavior, draw boundaries, not accept unacceptable behavior, remove themselves from dangerous situations, and so on. But the charge that they're seeing, the charge that they're experiencing from this villain, is still something that they just can't wrap their head around. And it's just something that they just keep thinking about, like, and they're obsessing on, and they really need to get some therapy around that kind of behavior, and it just drives them nuts, and it's something that consumes them. Then they definitely probably would benefit from some past lifetime healing, some shadow work themselves, and really trying to find where that stored energy is that's attracting this to them, so that they can alchemize it, move out of distortion into the light, and create a completely different paradigm for themselves. So that's what I'll say. You can see something in someone else and not get triggered by it, but also not invite it into your life. So that person who used to in a past lifetime be the villain, and in this lifetime they became the victim, and then they do their shadow work, and all of a sudden they're able to shift that energy inside of them and become self-actualized, independent, and strong. Now they can still see it, but they can do so from the place of the healer. They can do so from this position of power where they're empowered by the knowledge, they understand it, and they have compassion all the way around the board. They've learned their lessons around it, and then they get to ascend that piece. So that's what we're going for in the Earth School. It's hard work. It's hard work. Some of these lessons, I've seen people in my own life history, take lifetimes to learn. The older your soul is and the more times you've done this work, the quicker you can start to understand how to move through this energy, the faster your ascension process gets. And the more shadow work becomes less frightening, and it becomes more appealing, because you know that you're going to have this really strong energy on the other side. And that's what when people say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that used to infuriate me. So I didn't feel like it had made me very strong up at that point. I was still in pain from a lot of these experiences, but now that I have done shadow work around them, I actually know what they're talking about, and I really do feel stronger and more empowered and more compassionate and understanding and healed. So I hope you enjoyed our lesson today on shadow work, and I encourage you to do the exercises that we're going to do in the meditations in the comments, or I'll connect links in the comments to the meditation that goes along with this video. I look forward to working with you. Thank you so much.